Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Lady Sherry Lights, and welcome to the Morning Cup with me. In today's episode, we're going to step into our final phase of this Vision Unlocked journey. We're going to talk about what it looks like to advance, to walk boldly in supernatural confidence. Listen, you've already aligned yourself with the vision of God for your life. You've already made a conscious decision to arise and just become who God says you are. So now it's just simply time to advance. Can you put your hands on yourself and say, it is simply time to advance? Now, when we begin to talk about advancing means to move forward, but not just move forward, just moving forward. It means to move forward very purposely. It means to move forward in a purposeful way. It means motion. It means no more delay, no more excuses, no more sitting in what once was. But it is the bold decision. Y'all, it is a bold decision to move forward, even when the map isn't complete. So I believe that in this season that God is calling us to move forward. He doesn't want you to wait for everything to be mapped out, because isn't it just like us? We want to be able to see the end from the beginning, but then it wouldn't require faith. So God is calling us, each one of us, to move with boldness, to move with boldness. So we're going to talk about walking in faith, walking by faith, not by sight, how to pick up your own mat. You know, just like the lame man laying at the pool of Bethesda, we're going to talk about you picking up your own mat, facing the unknown, and going forward anyway, because it's your season. Do you believe it? It's your season. And like I told you last week, a lot of times we don't step into our season because we are waiting for a movement. But I believe that in this season, this time that we're existing in right now, God doesn't want you to wait for a movement. I believe that God is making you a movement. And as I previously said, this is the Morning Cup. This is a movement that was started more than 10 years ago. And when we initially started this, we were doing it via conference call, HD conference call, and we have done this for several years. And I heard God when He started speaking to me about putting the Morning Cup on a different platform. So then it becomes accessible to everybody everywhere. You don't really have to sign up. You don't have to really send me anything in order to be acclimated to this. But if you're just scrolling through YouTube, you can see this broadcast. And so as it began to speak to me, I started doubting myself. I started second guessing the ministry, the effectiveness of it, even though I knew in the past that it had been very effective and propelling and cultivating those people who connected themselves to this particular ministry. The evidence is there that increase and expansion, began to take place. But even though I had proof, let me tell you, I still second guessed the validity and, the effectiveness of what God had really given me. And so I was waiting for all the pieces to be in place. I was waiting to have all of the equipment. I was waiting to have the microphones and to have the camera. I was waiting on everything, the digital backdrop. I was waiting on all the pieces to be in place. But I heard the Lord when He told me to go forth. He says, no, you don't need all of that when I'm calling you to do something. If you have faith to step out, then I have the power to make it be what it needs to be. And so I'm saying to somebody this morning, you just got to start. You have to start. You just have to put your hands to the plow and start. And that's what I did. I created a few graphics. I sat down in front of my computer. I created, this live stream. I clicked the go live button and I just started. I just started. I started. And so I just want you to be encouraged this morning and knowing that that is exactly what we're going to be talking about today in this final phase of Vision Unlocked. Now, when something is locked, either you need a key, you need a code, or you need a strategy. Well, Vision Unlocked is a 3-step strategy to get you from your seat of excuses to manifestation. What is that 3-step process? Number 1, it is align. Align yourself with the God ordained vision for your life. What has God said? What is He saying about you? Well, you have to figure out what is God saying. You have to remember what God said. And then we have to intentionally align with that vision. The next step is to arise. That means that I have to stand up. I have to rise up. That means that when I decide to stand up or rise up, I'm posturing myself for movement. Isaiah 60:1 says, arise and shine, for thy light has come. The glory of the Lord is risen upon thee. Let me tell you, the glory will never rise on you sitting down. The glory will never rise on you making excuses. The glory will never rise on you standing in the shadows. But the scripture says, arise and shine, for thy light has come. You have to arise first. And you have to make a decision to be everything God is saying, arise, aligning, and arising. And then the glory of the Lord will begin to rest on you. And so we purposely arise. We stand up in it. Whatever God is saying, you have to give Him an eternal yes. I am ready to be who you say I am. Not who I say I am, but who God says I am. And today we come to the 3rd step, and that is advance. Well, when we talk about advance, what does that mean? As I forestated, it means to move forward in a very purposeful way. We're not moving, advancing doesn't mean to move haphazardly. When I was a soldier, this is how it kind of looked. So every morning you had to get information, right? So you had to get information with the platoon. All right. So getting information represented what I call alignment. So you had to get information, take your place, your position in that formation. Okay. And so once we were there, we were lined up, we were in the platoon by squads, then we were given a command. And that command sounded something like attention. And so whenever you were called to attention, that meant you were postured, you were positioned for movement. And then the next command you were given was forward march. And whenever that command was given, that meant that we were ready to start moving. We had to start moving our feet in cadence and in rhythm. Okay. So advancing simply means moving forward, but moving forward in a purposeful way. So advancing is not, it's not just about physical movement, but it is the confirmation that transformation has taken place. Well, you aligned, you've arisen. So that is a definite sign that something has happened on the inside of you, because you've made a conscious decision that I have to move with God. I have to go in the direction that God is calling me. And God not only calls you in a spiritual direction, I believe that God can call you in a career movement. He can call you in a ministry movement, because as Christians, it's not just about the church, it's about the kingdom. And so I believe that we all have assignments in our local assembly, but I also believe that we have a kingdom assignment. And when I talk about kingdom, what I'm simply saying is it is global. When you talk kingdom, that means it moves you beyond the confines of the four walls of your local assembly. So now, this is why it was very critical to put the morning cup on this platform, this YouTube live, because now it takes me out of the confinements of the four walls of the church, or being just limited to quote unquote my people. And now it causes me to be on a global platform, where now I'm accessible to anybody who's in this platform. And so I call that kingdom. There's a scripture in the Bible that says that we won't be able to look there and say that's kingdom, or to look here and say this is kingdom. You know why? Because kingdom is a mindset. So this is what moving forward is all about. Advancing is a mindset to step over into kingdom. Right. So whenever I come out of just my tribe, my people, my church, my reformation, then I can step into kingdom, because that makes me, that, it kind of exposes me to anybody, to everybody who has an ear to hear. So you can align your heart with God, right? You can arise in identity and calling. But until you advance, your assignment remains unfulfilled. Unfulfilled. So remember, I told you, we write things down in our journals. We create vision boards every year. But until you personally and intentionally decide to advance, decide to forward march, your assignment is still going to remain unfulfilled. So, advance is our third leg of this journey, because it represents the activation of everything that God has really invested in us, everything that God has invested in us. The lessons that life trials leave, the lessons that failure leaves. It is the activation of everything that you have aligned and that you have arisen for. It is the movement that proves your faith. Faith without works is dead, being alone. So faith plus movement. It is the movement. It is the works that proves your faith. Faith. the obedience that births manifestation, and the momentum that propels you into destiny. So now, as we begin to forward march, as we begin to move forward in a purposeful way, and the more you walk, the more momentum you pick up. The more you do it, the better you get at it. See, that's why you can't wait to start. You can't wait for it to be perfect to start, because if you start in perfection, you have no room to grow. So the more you move, the more you take a step, the more you do it. Every episode I create, I'm picking up momentum. I'm getting better. I'm getting better at the thing that God has called me into. So let's talk about it. Hope you brought your Bible this morning. I want you, and if you're taking notes, I want you to go to James 2 and 22. I'm sorry, James 2 and 26. So movement is the proof that you have vision. Okay? So James 2 and 26 says it like this, and I just said it: faith without works is dead, being alone. You got to have some works. That's the only way we know your faith. Oh, you can say, oh, I got faith, I believe God. Show me. Where's your proof? If you believe God, where's your proof? Where are your works? Now, you can align with God's will and rise in identity, but without action, purpose remains potential. Now, until you activate it, it remains potential. Along with this morning cup, the movement, y'all, I'm full of movements. I started the movement of purpose, power, and potential. Everything that God created, He created it with an assignment. He created it with a purpose. He created it to perform a specific function. Power. The Holy Ghost applied. It adds power. It adds empowerment to whatever your purpose is. And then as you begin to operate in that power applied purpose, then you begin to walk out your potential. Then it becomes potential, purpose, power, potential. But then the next step is it only becomes potential when you advance. When you advance. So advancing means no longer waiting. What are you waiting for? That's the question. Ask yourself, what am I waiting for? Are you waiting for somebody to validate what God spoke? Are you waiting for somebody to tell you that you're good enough? You're anointed enough? Are you waiting for somebody to tell you that you're degreed enough? Like, what are you waiting on? I had to ask myself, what was I waiting on? I started telling myself I just couldn't sit down in front of this camera and record this. But then that thing that sits on my shoulder says, but you preach everywhere. So now why are you scared? Like, why? Now come up with something else, because that's a lie. And so I'm telling you this morning, every excuse that you are making for not starting, for not advancing, and not moving forward, you're just telling yourself lies. You're making excuses for not stepping into the vision that God has given you. And you want me to tell you the real truth, because I had to tell the real truth to myself. The real truth is, I think many times, just like Miriam Williamson said, I believe that's the poet that wrote it, we really don't fear failure. What we really fear is that we're going to be successful. Because if this thing is successful, then that means I have to take on more responsibility, right? So at the end of the day, we don't really fear failure. We really fear being successful. What happens if it's really successful? What happens when it's in several countries? What happens when this movement becomes a conference? What happens from a retreat to a conference? What happens if people really start connecting to this ministry? So, advancing means you're no longer waiting, but you just got to start walking. If you was in church, I tell you, look at your neighbor and tell your neighbor to start walking. So, number two, you're not called to stay where you were. Let me say that again. You're not called to stay where you were. Deuteronomy 1 and 6. You have stayed long enough at this mountain. When the children were going through the wilderness, they were going around in circles. They kept coming back to the same mountain. And Deuteronomy 1 and 6, the Lord God began to tell them, you have stayed long enough at this mountain. You have stayed long enough in this one place. You have stayed stuck long enough. God never intended for us to get stuck in preparation. Okay, you haven't sent the letters out. But I can't start until I send the letters out. I can't start until I get my marketing together. I can't start until I have all the finances in place. God never intended for you and I to get stuck in preparation. He desires progress. God always desires movement. He always desires progress. Advancing means you respond to his nudge forward. You respond to his whisper forward march, even when it's uncomfortable. And I believe you have to have a small piece of nervousness, of uncomfortability, because that lets you know that you're not doing it in your strength, right? So you're going to be uncomfortable when you start, because you know that without God, you can't do it anyway. Without God giving you the wherewithal, you cannot do it anyway. Without God, we can't be effective in these things that we're stepping forward to do, that we're stepping out to do. We cannot do it on our own. Well, we can. But if we want it to be what God says it is and what it should be, we have to depend on him. Yeah, I have to depend on God. So, number three, advance requires trust. Let's go to John 5 and 8. Then Jesus said to him, get up, pick up your mat, and walk. Like the man at the pool of Bethesda, we can get used to our dysfunction. We can get used to our inadequacies. We can get used to our deficits. He kept laying at that pool, and he kept making that same excuse, that same lame excuse every year. When the water was troubled, he had nobody to put him in the pool. You keep making that same old lame excuse. I can't start because I don't have a team. You keep making that same lame old excuse. I can't start because the people I expect to support me may not. Or you keep telling yourself that same old lame excuse. It's not marketed enough. I need 30 days to market it, to get my graphics out. That's called being comfortable with your lack and your dysfunction. Okay? But you have to get up anyway, move anyway, trust God anyway. Trust God anyway. Number 4, it's the bridge between promise and possession. It's the bridge between promise and possession. What has God spoken to you in your yesteryears that you're still awaiting fulfillment? You're still waiting to take possession of it. What has God spoken to you? Well, advancing is the bridge to possession. Remember, I said faith without works is dead, being alone. So, advancing is the bridge. It's the bridge to the thing, it's the bridge to the possession, it's the bridge to the promise. It's the bridge. You got to move. Isaiah 43:18-19. Forget the former things. I'm doing a new thing. Advancing puts you in position to see what you've been praying for. Good God. It's not enough to know you're chosen, but you got to walk like it. You got to act like it. You got to talk like it. You got to move like it. It's not enough. Everybody say, well, I know I'm chosen. Okay. What you going to do? Well, your conversation sounds like defeat. Every time I talk to you, like you're making an excuse. You know, I talk to myself. So every time I talk to myself, we making excuses, right? So if you know you're chosen, you got to act like it. You got to move like it. You got to strategize like God chose you and like he gave you this assignment because he made you a promise for your future. So advancing is the bridge to your possession. God, number 5, if you're taking notes, God moves through your movement. If you're not moving, God not moving. Luke 17:14. As they went, they were healed. So let's look at it a different way. If they would have never gone, they would have never been healed. So God moves with your movement. So as those lepers began to move and as they went, they were healed. Because when you start moving and walking forward, that implies a journey. And sometimes I believe that in this walk with Christ, there are certain things that have been planted along the way on our journey. That's why you can't wait to see everything from the beginning, but you just got to start moving. If those lepers had never started moving, if they had never gone, y'all, they would have never received their healing. So breakthrough happens as you go. A connection happens as you go. And sometimes you haven't connected with the people who can really advance your vision because we keep sitting among the same people. But sometimes as you go, sometimes as you put yourself in different atmospheres, as you begin to connect with different conferences, as you begin to go forward, breakthrough happens. Tell somebody God meets us in the motion because advancing implies motion. It implies movement. It implies walking. It implies you coming out of being stuck. It implies you moving beyond that stagnated place. Well, really, when you're stagnated, movement is still happening actually. You know, you're just going the other way. You're going backwards. And so when we begin to walk out, breakthrough happens. Who's waiting on your journey to connect with you? Who's postured and positioned on your journey to give you the wisdom you need to fully activate what God has given you? See, until we move and step outside of our place of comfort, we'll never know. And what we do is we go in cycles. We keep expecting the same people to take us somewhere that God has ordained. Now, I'm just speaking this on a general sense. The disclaimer is that we always look to our leaders. We always look to those who are in authority to give us wisdom and to give us instructions. But generally speaking, many of us sit in the same cycle with the same people. They couldn't tell you anything last year. They haven't even activated their own vision. So why in the world are you expecting them to be able to tell you, give you wisdom to activate your vision? You're further along in your process than they'll ever be. So why do you keep expecting the same people to give you something that they can't? Doesn't mean you don't love them. It doesn't mean that they don't have a very purposeful place in your life. But listen, this morning we're talking about advancing. We're talking about making strides, forward marching, and moving forward in a purposeful way. So you got to think about that. And you got to be very cautious and be spirit led about that. Because see, you have to be masterful in this season. I'm really afraid of people who's saying in this hour, you just gotta cut folks off. If they not moving like you moving, you just gotta cut people off. No, that's not godly. You have to be masterful and learning how to repurpose people. You mean after somebody has been with you 15 and 20 years, you can just cut them off because they haven't manifested what you expected? No, you become prayerful and you become purposeful about learning how to repurpose them, how to restructure them in the plan so that now they can walk into their fullness. Because sometimes we don't exactly use people in the right way according to their gifting. Sometimes we'll use people according to what they can do for us. And so sometimes we miss it. We miss it. So I'm the kind of person, I'm going to activate what's on the inside of you, whether it serves me or not. Because I understand that listen, we all have a purpose. And once you get activated, whether that serves me or not has nothing to do with you. The point is, you have a purpose. You have an assignment. You have something that God has placed on the inside of you. And by God, it is time to activate that. If you're going to be, have y'all been looking at the news? If you're going to be anything, now is your time. What you waiting on? We traveling now. But in the next year, you don't know if borders are going to be closed again, if travel is going to be stopped again. We have no idea what the world is going to look like in the next 6 months. So you got to activate. You have to shift your assignment to something that's global. That's the lesson we learned in COVID. That's the lesson we learned in COVID. It taught us that when you couldn't see people in person, we were forced to put what we did on a global and a digital platform. Yeah, COVID taught us that. Everything about COVID wasn't bad. It taught us how to be creative. It taught us how to re-strategize, how to realign. and how to refocus our content. So listen, you have to understand that God moves through your movement. Are you moving? Are you ready to get started? And if not, ask yourself why. I didn't wait on anybody to tell me I could sit down and start this podcast. I told people about it. I put the link out. Whoever subscribed, you subscribe. But I refuse to wait for external validation. Because the truth of the matter is, I don't even know everything that's in me. You don't know everything that God has placed on the inside of you. So why in the world would you wait for somebody who don't know what's in you to validate what God is telling you? They don't even know everything that's in them. And remember, I'm speaking on a very general, from a very general perspective. So all of us who are being led, we know, what you need to do. So that's that disclaimer. So when the Israelites came to the Red Sea in Exodus 14 and 15, the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on." Moses was crying out to God because he didn't see a way out. They had come to the Red Sea. He didn't see a way out, but God knew the way out. Maybe you're crying out to God because you don't see the way. You don't see a way out. You don't see how it's going to come to fruition. My word to you this morning is move forward. God knows how to part the Red Sea. See, Moses was thinking, how do we get across this sea? He had no options. So whenever you're at a place when you have no options, then that means that God is obligated to do the supernatural. Who would have known that God would have parted that Red Sea so that the children of Israel could walk across on dry land? And not only that, see, the reason they feared is because they knew the enemy was behind them. And if God didn't do something real quick, they were going to be destroyed by their enemy. Moses was crying out as the leader, typical. When you are responsible for a body of believers, for a group of people, even if you're a manager or supervisor on a job or in the secular sector, when you are in charge of people, I believe that this is the burden, the responsibility of leadership. So Moses was crying out because he could not fathom losing all of those people that God had put in his hands to the Egyptians that were coming behind. But when God told Moses essentially, stop your crying, wipe your face, dry your tears, and tell the children, prepare for forward movement. And when they just took the step, when they advanced forward, then it opened God up. It left God to do what only God can do. He parted that Red Sea. I'm telling you today that if you're at a place you don't see the way, you've tried everything, you ran out of options, just like the woman with the issue of blood. She had went to every doctor. She had spent all that she had. She had no more options. But then she heard that Jesus was passing by. And she did something that his disciples, as long as they had been walking with Jesus, she did something they had never done. She touched him. And her touch had such an impact that Jesus turned around and said, "Who touched me?" Because there was something that he felt that he had never felt before. So I want you to understand that when you come to a place of being limited, you've tried everything, there are no options. May I submit to you that you are in the perfect position, the perfect position for a miracle, for a supernatural move of God. I need a miracle right now. I need God to part the Red Sea for me right now. I'm out of options. So I'm waiting on God. But while I'm waiting, I'm moving. I'm making steps because I want God to know that I trust him enough to step out. And that sometimes is all God wants to know, is that you'll make the first move. I know you're waiting on God to make the first move, but God is waiting on you to make the first move because he needs to see your faith. So as you begin to move, God starts moving in your movement. That's the kind of God we serve. In Luke 17 and 14, again, as they went, they were cleansed. I'm just trying to paint a picture for you that you just can't keep making excuses. You can't keep staying stuck. You got to get up and you have to move. The leper's healing didn't come while they were waiting. Sure, they knew they had leprosy. They knew they had this illness. It didn't come while they were waiting. I'm down here waiting on you. Okay. God says, no, you're not down here waiting on me. I'm waiting on you to move. So even though these lepers knew they had this sickness, this leprosy, they decided to move. They decided to go. So as they moved in obedience, their healing came. Now, advancement is where faith partners with action. You cannot get away from action. You can tell me all day long you believe God. Okay, where's your proof? Where's your action? Where are your works? Did you even tell anybody about it? Like, what we doing? I had a close friend of mine say this to me. She said, you doing all these things, but who knows? Like, who knows you're doing this? I said, good point. That's very good. See, you can't get upset when people start telling you the truth about you. Because, I wanted to dumb down. I just wanted to do it, just with this group. And, I just wanted to do it. I wanted to expose this to people I already knew. I wanted to do it in circles where I felt comfortable. How we do, because I wanted to be validated, somebody tell me it's good enough, before I really put it out. You know what we do. And she says, who knows what you're doing? So advancement is where faith partners with your actions. Miracles manifest y'all write this down. Miracles manifest in motion. We talked about the man laying by the pool of Bethesda. So we know it was a decision. He kept waiting on somebody to do it. But God came to him and gave him a strategy. He said, no, rise up So if God was telling him to rise up, the Lord knew all along that he had the ability to stand. Maybe he was comfortable in his dysfunction. Is that you? Are you comfortable in your dysfunction? See, when the master came, when Jesus came, he says, rise up, take up your bed, take up the thing that's been aiding your discomfort, take up the thing that's been aiding your dysfunction, take up that mat and start walking. This is what Jesus said to the man. Y'all, he had been stuck for 38 years waiting for somebody to put him in that pool. And God comes with one word and activates him to move forward. He gives him one command: rise up, take up your bed, and walk. Rise up, take up your bed, and walk. Because staying down is no longer an option. It is no longer an option. Staying down is no longer an excuse in the presence of Jesus. I can't even imagine what Jesus says when he knows he's put something in us and we keep making excuses. I, you know, I can't even imagine. For those of us who have children, we can see it on a small scale, maybe, but I can't even imagine what Jesus thinks when we sit down here and we keep making excuses for why we're not moving forward. So let me give you some reasons why people struggle, and you've probably already come to this analyzation on your own from these scriptures. But people struggle to advance because because of the fear of failure or the fear of the unknown. Because see, when I start advancing, I really don't know really where God has taken me, where I'm going to end up. I don't know if it's going to bring me to a new people. So at the end of the day, we really fear the unknown. We really fear, really, how successful things can really be. The second reason people fail to advance is because of comfort in familiar dysfunction. I just said it. Comfort in familiar dysfunction. Moses. Well, I can't speak well. I can't talk. I stutter. Moses. Comfortable in familiar dysfunction. Well, I can't do that. I can't do this. Comfortable in familiar dysfunction. Number 3, waiting for the perfect conditions. Can I tell you, there's never a perfect time. There's never a perfect condition. There's never going to be a perfect time to step out because then it wouldn't require faith. God always makes sure that we have to look to faith. Number 4, just not feeling ready or qualified. I'm not ready yet. When you going to be ready? I don't know. Let me put this in place. Let me get this done. Just not feeling ready, not feeling qualified enough, not feeling educated enough, not feeling anointed enough. Like all of that, all of that. But the truth is, advancement doesn't wait for readiness. It responds to obedience. So if we're not moving forward this morning, could it be that we've been disobedient to some instruction that the Lord has given us? Because I tell you, there's some things that's going to happen when you begin to advance. When you begin to advance, it's going to break the cycles of delay. Let me tell y'all, motion kills stagnation. When you start moving, it kills stagnation. Number two, you make room for God to reveal more. So the more you do, the more God reveals. The more you move, the more he exposes to you. And you're like, well, I've never seen it like that before. Yeah, that's because you started moving. Some things are revealed as you go. So provision is often released after obedience. Provision is often released after obedience. Just trying to let it sink in. Number three, you become a model for others. When you start making moves, when you start moving forward purposely, when you start moving forward, marching forward, you become a model for others. And it causes them to understand that if you did it, I can do it too. Hey, sis, tell me how you did that. Tell me what you did. Your movement gives others permission to move too. So there's no competition. Like I said, everybody has purpose. Everybody has an assignment. My job is to get you activated. I don't have to activate you to serve me. I'm activating you to serve the kingdom. So once you get activated, whether it serves me or not, I don't have anything to do with that. Because activation is all about God. It's all about who he's calling you to minister to. It's all about your assignment. So sometimes we don't move because we fear that, oh, now that means I'm going to have to stop doing this, and then that means I'm not going to be available for that. Well, as long as you're in alignment with God, none of that matters. The idea is to be who God says you are. Oh, we don't hold people back because we want them to serve us. No, no, no. Because serving is always an element. It doesn't matter how high you get, you're going to always have to serve somewhere. So you never get away from serving, right? That's always there. God always ensures that there is always a place, because serving keeps us grounded. Serving keeps us from being high-minded. So there's always going to be a place to serve. So please, sir, please, ma'am, don't not move because you feel it's going to stop you from doing certain things. No, God is not that kind of God. He's factored in everything. Number four, you activate divine momentum. One obedient step can trigger a chain reaction in the spirit. So here is the prophetic truth. You have stayed long enough where you are. You have walked around that mountain long enough. You have made those same excuses long enough. God never intended for you to set up camp where you were, only meant to pass through. Let me say it again. God never intended for you to set up camp where he only intended for you to pass through. So I want to submit to you that this is your season to advance. The light is already here. The glory is already on you. The next move is on you. The ball is in your court because advancing is not perfection, it's progress. So even if you're making small daily steps, that's better than just standing still. God is not looking for progress, for perfection. He's looking for progress. Well, that brings us to the end of our Vision Unlocked series. Align, arise, and advance. Whenever something is locked, you either need a key, a code, or a strategy. Well, through this Vision Unlocked series, we've given you a strategy to get your vision unlocked, to unlock you from you. Because, see, really, you're the one that's holding you back. It's not because of what people are saying. No. You are causing your own delay. And I'm saying that to you because I had to say it to myself. I am the one who's causing or who caused my delay. But guess what? I made a conscious decision to align, to arise, and to advance. So listen, prayerfully, you received something that activated you in your spirit. And I hope you were activated enough that when you get off this live, that you start making steps, that you start moving forward, that you start moving, making movements in a very purposeful way. Sometimes it takes revisiting a vision. Like I said, this is not new, but God just gave me a new strategy. It's not that you're not doing what it said, but sometimes He want to make it bigger. He wants to make it greater. Are you ready? Well, I pray that the rest of your day is blessed, and I want you to meet me right back here next Wednesday morning at 6:30 a.m. for the Morning Cup podcast. And let's see what God is going to say to us next. Let's see where God is going to take us next. I pray that you be blessed. Until next time, God bless.